I get it. You scroll through endless listings, see a sleek sliding miter saw that promises perfect cuts every time, and you think you've finally found the tool that will make your crown molding project look professional. Then you bring it home, set it up, and realize the blade is too short for the job, the sliding rail isn't as smooth as the photos suggested, or the whole thing takes up half the garage. That gap between the glossy listing and the real-world experience is why I'm doing this deep dive. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about why a sliding compound miter saw matters at all. If you've ever tried to cut a long piece of crown molding without a slide, you know the difference between a clean, straight cut and a jagged, uneven edge that forces you to sand or, worse, start over. The same goes for bevel's dual-bevel capability. Lets you tilt the blade both left and right without flipping the workpiece, which saves time and reduces the chance of misalignment. In a professional setting, that translates into faster job turnover. For the DIYer, it means you can finally tackle that kitchen remodel without hiring a carpenter. The Makita LS1219L is positioned as a higher-end, 12-inch sliding compound miter saw that tries to cover both the pro and serious DIY markets. Its biggest selling point is the increased capacity. You can nest up to an 8-inch crown molding vertically, and the base can handle a 63/4-inch CH cut depth. In practice, that means you can cut those tall, decorative crowns in one pass instead of having to make multiple cuts or resort to a smaller saw that forces you to trim the excess later. When I walked a friend's job site where they were installing crown molding in a historic home, the crew could lay the full-length pieces on a workbench, slide the saw under, and finish the entire run without remeasuring or recutting. That kind of efficiency is where the value really shows up. The rail system on this Makita is a two-steel design that promises a single slide glide motion. Most sliding saws have a dual rail that can feel a bit loose if the bolts aren't perfectly tightened, but the LS1219L's rails lock together in a way that feels solid, even when you're pulling the blade across a 12-inch board. The smoothness matters when you're making repeated cuts, say, 30 or 40 identical angles for a deck railing. You don't want the blade lagging half an inch on the second cut because the rail isn't tracking. In the field, users have reported that the rail stays true, so you end up with consistent cuts without having to constantly readjust the fence. A practical feature that often gets overlooked is the built-in laser. It projects a thin line onto the workpiece, giving you a visual cue for where the blade will hit. In a noisy shop where you can't hear the motors hum clearly, that laser can be a lifesaver. I tried it while cutting a baseboard with a tight 45-degree angle. The laser line stayed on target even when I moved the saw a few centimeters forward to accommodate the board's thickness. It's not a replacement for a fine-tooth blade, but it cuts down on guesswork and reduces the number of test cuts you have to make. Now, the LS1219L doesn't come alone. It's paired with Makita's WST01N large rising base stand. The stand adds a generous platform that effectively gives you a second work surface. If you're in a shop where you're juggling multiple pieces, that extra space can be the difference between a tidy workflow and a chaotic one where you're constantly moving boards around. The feed roller on the stand is 121/8 inches wide and made from hardened aluminum, so when you pull a long board through the saw, it rolls smoothly without digging into the wood. The stand also features a spring-loaded mechanism that lets you lock the saw in place for a stable cut, then release it quickly when you need to reposition. I've seen it in a small contractor's shop where the owner flips the saw between a workbench and a rolling cart multiple times a day. The quick release saves him a few precious minutes each time. All that said, the LS1219L isn't a perfect fit for every workshop. The first practical drawback is sheer size and weight. The saw and stand together weigh well over 200 pounds, and you'll need a solid, level floor to keep the base from wobbling. If you're working out of a cramped garage or a rented space where you can't mount the stand to the floor, you might find the setup a bit unwieldy. The sliding rail, while smooth, does require a fair amount of clearance behind the saw to let the blade travel its full length. In a tight corner, you'll have to compromise on the maximum cut depth, which defeats the purpose of having that larger capacity in the first place. Another consideration is price. Makita positions this as a premium tool, and the sticker price reflects that. For a hobbyist,